I'm Dr. Max Gomez. From getting the right amount of sleep to separating fact from fiction about vaccines to fighting obesity, it's all about children's health on Science and You, starting now.
Hello, I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson. We're here at the Jaffe Food Allergy Institute at Mount Sinai Hospital to find out why there's such an increase in child food allergies. Coming up on Science and You.
I'm Beth Kovetz, looking at the transition from childhood to adulthood, ahead on Science and You.
I'm Ari Goldberg. Kids and sleep, how much they need and how can they get it? That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Mike Gilliam. Childhood obesity is a problem that many kids struggle with, but there is help available. In just a minute, we'll take a look at the problem and also some of the remedies. That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Dr. Max Gomez. Childhood vaccinations have saved millions of lives and prevented countless cases of severe illness and disability. Yet vaccination rates in this country are at an all-time low. Are people's fears of childhood vaccines well-founded? Or are they emotional reactions not based in science? Here's the real story.
You're okay.
It's a disturbing sight, a young child so sick with whooping cough she can barely breathe. It's an image almost no one born after the 1950s has ever seen, when whooping cough, or pertussis, struck more than 120,000 children a year in this country.
Most of the children who got it before we had antibiotic therapy died. Even with antibiotic therapy, they can be severely impaired.
But whooping cough is more than 90% preventable with a vaccine. So are 13 other childhood diseases ranging from chickenpox and measles to terrifying polio and diphtheria. Vaccines are arguably the most important public health development in the past century.
A recent study using very large data sets that were done in Pittsburgh that estimate that vaccines have probably saved more than 100 million lives. There's no question that vaccines have really changed the course of history by preserving health.
So what accounts for the vocal anti-vaccine movement, often led by celebrities like Jim Carrey and Jenny McCarthy? The biggest fear for many has been that vaccines somehow trigger or cause autism. The culprit was said to be the mercury preservative in vaccines, called thimerosal. The theory has been extensively studied and discredited in a variety of ways.
Mercury was taken out of vaccines in Western Europe by 1991, and the incidence of autism only increased. Same thing's true here. We took it out of vaccines essentially by the year 2000, and the incidence of autism only increased. I mean, if you look at those data, you would say, let's put mercury back in vaccines so we can lower the incidence of autism.
It's been estimated that if you took all of the mercury in all of the vaccines that a child would have received, that it's less than the amount of mercury in a can of tuna fish. So we're talking about remarkably minuscule amounts.
Still, many parents remained unconvinced, claiming religious or personal belief exemptions from mandatory vaccinations. In some parts of Los Angeles, where these exemptions are common, a study by the Hollywood Reporter newspaper found vaccination rates in line with immunization rates in developing countries like Chad and South Sudan. The result has been outbreaks of previously contained diseases like measles and whooping cough. The rationale given by many of these objecting parents is that the recommended vaccine schedule of 26 childhood inoculations can overwhelm a young immune system, leading to autism and other developmental derangements. Again, a fear not based in science.
We have trillions of bacteria that live on our surfaces, our skin, our intestines, to which we make an immune response. We make grams of immunoglobulins every day to handle that enormous challenge that we get from our environment. Vaccines are really a blip on the screen. They're trivial compared to what you encounter and manage every day.
The immune system is remarkably robust. It's capable of handling enormous numbers of exposures. I'd go so far as to say in the first year of attending daycare, one is exposed to far more antigens than one's ever going to experience from vaccines through a lifetime.
So then what accounts for the fear of vaccines? Some experts say it's actually a lack of fear. Paralytic polio, chickenpox, measles, rubella, and whooping cough are diseases rarely, if ever, seen by modern-day parents.
You didn't have to convince my parents to get vaccines. They were children of the 20s and 30s. They saw diphtheria as a common killer of teenagers. You didn't have to convince me or people my age to get vaccinated. I had a lot of these diseases. But my children, who are 19 and 22, not only don't see these diseases today, they didn't grow up with these diseases. So for them, I think vaccination is a matter of faith.
So just to sum up the science and be very clear, childhood vaccines do not lead to autism or developmental delays. They prevent serious illness and disability. The consensus among pediatricians and scientists, public health experts is clear. You should vaccinate your children. For Science and You, I'm Dr. Max Gomez.
I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You. Weight management is a serious issue for kids. And even though some progress is being made in the battle against childhood obesity, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But the owner and founder of Gramercy Pediatrics is at the forefront in helping kids lose the weight. Meet 9-year-old Michael Perlmutter. Early in his young life, he struggled to maintain a healthy weight. This is a picture of him overweight at the beach this summer. But that's all changing now that his family has reached out for help from Dr. Hess. In just 2 short months, he's had remarkable weight loss.
When we first met Dr. Hess, right after Labor Day, Michael weighed 130 pounds. And as of this morning's scale, he weighed 112.
How does it feel now that you've lost 18 pounds in just a matter of months?
It feels really easy to run and play like I used to be able to be when me and my friends played tag, I used to be always it because I was so heavy, but now it's easier to run.
Dr. Hess says the problems Michael experienced are prevalent even though progress is being made.
In New York City, we've implemented several changes in the school systems and in the early education programs. So we are seeing a slight decrease in the percentage of obesity in the youngest children in the kindergarten age, 4 and 5-year-olds. But overall, no, we're not seeing much. It's kind of tabled off.
Why is the problem so prevalent in New York City?
Well, we have a lot of access to food. We have almost no exercise in elementary schools. Despite the fact that children are supposed to have 60 minutes of exercise, vigorous, moderate to vigorous exercise a day, New York City elementary schools from kindergarten to 5th grade only get 45 minutes of physical education a week.
So it's really not a problem of food necessarily.
It's a combination.
There's a lack of park space, and schools don't have safe places for kids to go outside. So some recess indoors, according to Hess.
When I worked in Brooklyn, the school had a gym, but the gym had poles, so they weren't allowed to run because they can crash into a pole.
Parents need to recognize if a child is developing a weight problem and act fast.
There are several red flags that parents should look out for. So sneak eating, that the parent finds wrappers, like candy wrappers, and eating huge portions. So you might buy a package of low-fat cheese sticks and keep them in your refrigerator, and you'll find 6 wrappers in the garbage that day because the child ate so many portions of it. So portion distortion is a huge one. When your child is eating 2 or 3 portions of dinner at a time, when you know that you gave them appropriate sized dinner.
Is there a real problem with the way people are actually serving food to their children?
Yes, so the kids are getting many more calories on their plate than they need. I show them that a slice of bread should never be more than a CD. A portion of meat should never be bigger than the size of a mouse, a computer mouse. That they can't have seconds of starches like potatoes, rice, pasta, that they can have seconds only of the vegetables. Cooking healthier with less salt and no butter and olive oil. So a lot about the dinner plate and what healthy portions are, and you'll be amazed.
Should they be eating off an adult plate?
No, kids should be eating off a child-sized plate for sure. So a salad plate is perfect for a child.
And there's the often talked about problem of kids consuming sugary drinks.
Sweet drinks are a huge contributor to pediatric obesity. It's probably between French fries and sweetened drinks. Those are our 2 worst enemies.
Michael's family adopted many of these techniques, including the exercise.
I started doing water polo. It's like laps and treading water most of the time. It's really, really hard because we pretty much swim laps the whole entire time, and it gets really, really tiring.
We've been eating at home more, Rather than eating out or ordering in, we've cut out almost all sweets. We're eating fewer grains, we're eating whole grains. And I say we because the whole family is doing it. We've all lost a few pounds. We limit our red meat, per Dr. Hess's suggestion, to once a week. We only have pasta once a week, and it's whole grain. And we eat lots of protein.
And now the whole family is losing weight with Michael.
It's about getting them motivated and lighting that spark. And usually once they start to lose the weight and they see that they can, then it's done. It's done. It's the hardest part is the first step.
So parents, the bottom line is if you think your child is developing a weight problem, you should act now. Get your child to the doctor and try to nip that problem in the bud. You could save yourself a lot of problems down the road. I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You.
According to the CDC, food allergies in children have grown 50% in the last decade or so. The Jaffe Food Allergy Institute at Mount Sinai is dedicated to providing care for those exact food allergies.
So these are the devices that we're prescribing in case there's a more severe allergic reaction.
Rainika Kara, a mother of 3, came to the Jaffe Food Allergy Institute at Mount Sinai with her youngest child to get tested for allergies.
So my son's allergic to eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, and whitefish. We are a nut-free house now. I do give my older daughter nuts when we're outside of the house, but we do cook eggs. We were very careful about our food practices in the house. But when I'm making stuff for him, I'll use things like an egg replacer, which I heard about through friends whose kids also have allergies. So we're trying to make it a very comfortable household for him, but I also don't want him to feel like that's the case everywhere he goes. So he needs to be aware of his allergies too.
So as a mom, what's it like for you? This is just a whole new thing that you didn't even think about, you didn't anticipate at all.
It's kind of stressful, to be honest with you, because I never had to deal with it with my oldest child. She never had any allergies. And watching my son go through his first reaction was very scary. And so being able to come here and know how to handle it has changed our lives. And it's made me less stressful about the fact that she has allergies, but I know how I can manage them now.
Dr. Scott Sicherer is professor of pediatric allergy and immunology at Mount Sinai Hospital and explains the reason for this sudden surge in allergies.
Well, some people call this an epidemic, and actually we did a study looking at peanut allergy in children. We did the first study in 1997, a follow-up study in 2002, and then in 2008, and we actually saw the number triple, which I didn't even believe looking at the numbers, that it went from 1 in 250 children to 1 in 70, so over 1% with just peanut allergy alone. But the CDC and other studies have reported these crazy increases. So I don't think it's just a reporting or a noticing kind of thing. I think we really are looking at a huge increase in food allergy. We have a lot of theories, but unfortunately we don't have a certain one thing, and it probably is a conglomeration of things. So if you think about how we live nowadays with fewer infections, we're not living on farms where there's more natural germs, we're cleaning our hands, we're using antibiotics, we're having smaller families. Our immune system is kind of looking around and going, well, what am I supposed to attack now? And it ends up attacking animal danders, pollens, and in this case, foods. That's one of the theories. So now that unfortunately more people are affected by it, there's also more awareness about keeping these individuals safe. So in the schools, there are maybe peanut safer or food allergy safer areas. There's more supervision of the younger children and more awareness about making sure that the child doesn't eat the food that they're allergic to.
While allergies in children can make circumstances challenging, there is that ray of optimism that kids eventually can grow out of some of them.
The natural course of these allergies differs by the food. And so most allergies are milk, egg, wheat, soy, peanut, tree nut, fish, and shellfish. Milk, egg, wheat, and soy allergies usually are childhood allergies, and they're usually outgrown. And now we're saying that those numbers are more like 80–85% by teenage years. We used to say no one outgrew a peanut allergy, but now we know that about 1 in 5 children will outgrow a peanut allergy. And about 10% will outgrow a tree nut allergy. And fish and shellfish are also in that category where they tend to persist. So peanut, tree nut, fish, and shellfish tend to persist, but some people outgrow them.
Dr. Sicherer also emphasizes being educated about allergies. He says it has to reach beyond the home, and one of the reasons may surprise you.
We found out that almost half of kids with food allergies reported being bullied, and oftentimes the parents didn't know about it.
Is that because their peers make fun of them?
Yes, but why? So why do children tease others? It's often because they don't understand something, right? So this is a weird thing. You know, you can't eat the food I can eat. Like, how can that be?
Right.
And it's hard to imagine that. Like, why can't you have milk? You know, I could have milk. I could have ice cream. Haha, you can't have ice cream. You know, it's kind of exploring it, but it ends up being bullying and teasing, and sometimes it could be dangerous if they're like trying to get the person to eat the food.
Dare them
yeah.
to eat them.
Sure. The lesson there is for parents with children with food allergy to ask their children about it, and also to address it. At least the school should address it to make sure that it's, you know, never happening.
Ultimately, it's about safety. And with handy remedies like Benadryl or epinephrine, also known as an EpiPen, if you have a severe reaction, Dr. Sicherer says there's only one place to go.
I sometimes worry people kind of connect, if I use the self-injector of epinephrine, I have to go to the emergency room, but that's not the right way to look at it. It's having a severe reaction, you should be getting to the emergency room. The epinephrine is very safe, it's helping you, but your symptoms might come back, you need to get to the emergency room.
Whether you're dealing with peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, wheat, or milk, be aware that there are allergies out there, but also know there are alternatives for your kids. At the Jaffe Food Allergy Institute at Mount Sinai, I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson for Science and You.
I'm Ari Goldberg. When it comes to sleep, children have vastly different needs. A baby may need 20 hours of sleep a night. A teenager, maybe only 8. We came to the experts to find out why different kids have different needs.
So children are not small adults, they have their own issues with sleep. For example, if we talk about pediatric sleep apnea, it's a very different entity than adult sleep apnea. The causes are different, the treatments are different, and the approach to the children are different. So
Dr. Haviva Veller is the director of the Pediatric Sleep Center at Cornell Weill Hospital, a facility dedicated exclusively to children aged 0 to 21. While there's no one-size-fits-all approach, in general, doctors break down sleep needs into 7 categories: babies, infants, preschoolers, school age, adolescents, teens, and young adults. It has to do with what sleep provides the body.
there are different stages in sleep, and each stage has its own function in terms of brain activity and body. When we fall asleep, the first half of the night we actually spend in deep sleep. And deep sleep is really the stage where we relax our body and we rest. Our brain activity is minimal, our heart activity is decreased. In the second part of the night, our body actually wakes up, our brain wakes up. Brain activity during the second part of the night, what we call Rem sleep or rapid eye movement sleep, is actually as active as when we are awake. We process things that we learn through the day and we embed them into long-term memories.
When it comes to infants and babies, they require the most sleep for very specific reasons.
It is very interesting because you know how babies actually have the highest or the steepest learning curve of all of us, because they need to learn to talk and understand and walk and crawl in a very short span of time. So babies actually sleep the most and they have the most REM sleep. As we age, we have less amounts of REM sleep, less amounts of deep sleep, and the whole sleep period shrinks.
On the other end of the spectrum, the sleep needs of teenagers come with their own demands, from increased schoolwork to extracurricular activities to electronic distractions.
Screens are a big problem, specifically because they project a very bright light. So when it starts to get dark outside, our body starts producing melatonin, and that melatonin is what makes us sleepy and want to go to bed. Once you stare at the bright light, like a TV screen, computer screen, iPhone screen, that melatonin is unable to work.
If your child is having prolonged sleep problems, the answer might be found in an overnight stay to monitor what is going on during sleep.
So when children come to the sleep lab, we monitor multiple factors. We look at their sleep stages to look at what we call sleep architecture, the quality of their sleep. We'll look at the way they breathe. We'll do it by looking at the flow through the nose, by the oxygen saturation, by the level of carbon dioxide, by the way the chest and abdomen are moving. We look at cardiac function. We have an EKG lead. We even look at the way they move their legs. We have leads on the legs.
Based on these results, a sleep doctor can normally prescribe some behavioral modifications to get a child back on track. However, some problems may be a result of medical reasons.
The pediatric airway is very, very narrow. It's only about 4 to 5 millimeters in diameter. In the adult airway, it's a lot larger, so the conditions that sort of affect the airway are a little different in kids.
Dr. Modi is a pediatric otolaryngologist, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and when it comes to sleep, a common issue he sees in children is difficulty breathing, which can adversely affect their sleep habits.
So let's just first talk about what the difference between tonsils and adenoids. So tonsils sit behind the mouth. Adenoids sit behind the nose. They're both made of the same tissue. They're made of this lymphoid tissue. The lymphoid tissue is part of the developing immune system. Sometimes in kids, the tonsils and adenoids will grow faster than the child grows, and if that happens, then they can have some obstructive symptoms.
When a child gets their tonsils or adenoids removed, is that mostly sleep-related?
Yes. So 90% of all tonsils and adenoids that are removed are because of sleep. 10% of tonsils and adenoids that are removed are because of recurrent infections, so recurrent strep or recurrent sinus infections, but they tend to be in the minority. Adenoidectomy and tonsillectomy, they're two separate procedures, but they are the most common major surgical procedures performed on kids in the United States. Anywhere from 300 to 400,000 procedures are performed every year.
But a serious problem can develop when blockages cause more than just snoring. They cause apneas, which are actual pauses in sleep because a child's breathing has been blocked off. Apneas, among other things, are what sleep doctors will look for in a child.
Why are we so keen about diagnosing sleep apnea? Because it's more common than we actually thought. About 2 to 4% of children will have sleep apnea. So if you think about the children in the tribors, it's a few millions of children that might suffer from sleep apnea.
A child suffering from such a sleep problem faces greater concerns than merely feeling tired the next day, from behavioral to developmental.
Growth hormone is excreted during deep sleep. If you're sleep deprived and you spend less time in deep sleep, there's less growth hormone excretion, and that can affect growth. Even with one night of sleep deprivation, parents can say the kids are less concentrated, they're more hyperactive, and they don't do well in school. If you sleep 1 hour less than what you need, there's already consequences for the day.
Parents can help their children by establishing strong sleep habits.
First of all, start it early in life. I mean, as early as 6 months of age. Sleep routine is very important. And we want the activities that lead to sleep to be calming. So reading a book or talking about things that happen during the day is a good way to kind of lead to sleep.
You should evaluate your child 2 hours after they go to sleep. Go in the room and see how they're sleeping. Do they look comfortable, or do they look like they're really struggling to breathe? And you can tell, and it's really not that hard.
Many adults that have issues with falling asleep, it stems from the way they were put to sleep as children. It's a very important skill, and it's a tool that you give to your child, and he can carry it for the rest of his life.
So for parents, if you can set healthy bedtime routines early, you'll be setting the stage for healthy sleeping habits as an adult. For Science and You, I'm Ari Goldberg.
I'm Beth Kovetz. On the morning of their 18th birthday, every child legally becomes an adult. But physically, not everyone makes that transition at the same pace. To understand the telltale signs and help your child make this change, we came to Premier Pediatrics to talk to Dr. Dina Blanchard.
Let's start by talking about the physical changes that accompany the transition to adulthood. With girls, typically what you'll first see is breast development. You'll see a large growth spurt, and then after the growth spurt comes the period. With boys, they'll have testicular growth. You'll often see changes in the voice, so you know that kind of up and down kind of thing that boys go through. Puberty can start even as early as age 7. Obviously, not everybody's body reads the book, but what we're talking about is kind of an average. And most boys and girls have completed puberty between 15 to 16 on average.
And they are not adults at 15 to 16.
Right. So the way your body looks does not indicate the way your mind works as an adult. So you can have a 16-year-old that looks like a full-grown man, but he thinks like a 16-year-old. What you're going through kind of in an emotional transition during this time period is actually Very interesting, because what you have is this transition from pre-adolescence, where you have a lot of concrete thinking, to the development of abstract thinking. You also have we see an increase in impulsivity in this age group, and what you call the development of executive functioning. It helps keep in check the impulsivity and also organizational skills as well. And so that stuff is really developing through the teenage years and is a very important transition from being a child to being an adult.
How can we help kids make this transition?
So this is actually where the pediatrician, the child, and the parent partner together. And that's called transition planning. And so what you're doing is trying to come up with a way that as the child transitions through adolescence, they start to accept more responsibility for their own health and for their medical care. So some examples of that would be to let them make their own appointments, work with your children at home to understand the medications that they take, allow the child to answer the questions. And this can start from an early age, even 11, 12, and parents are there then to fill in the gaps, but really allow the child to take control of understanding their medical needs. You want to empower them during their visits as teens. Being supportive of that for your child, encouraging them to be open and honest with the physician is a very important part of that as well.
What about the craziness of college? We all go off and we see any doctor that we can at the health center. How do we get our kids through that period?
What I would encourage parents to do is work with their pediatrician to find an adult provider so that the child sees the adult provider every single time when they come home for a break. So the way you go from a yearly physical with your pediatrician, you then go directly into a yearly physical with your adult internist. And that way you don't end up having this period where kids get lost in the shuffle and don't end up seeing a doctor until they're ill.
We hear a lot about men not going to see doctors. How can we teach our boys good skills that they can carry on into their adulthood?
I would say the first thing is role modeling. Encourage dad to go to the doctor and to tell the kids. So if you're sitting down to dinner on a weekend, say, I went to the doctor this week. I also got my flu shot this week. So that they have a sense that it is normal and regular for adult men to do that.
From Premier Pediatrics, this has been Beth Kovetz for Science and You.
That's our show for today. I'm Dr. Max Gomez. See you next time on Science and You.